developing an award-winning narrative for your nomination, your AAUT nomination. And it's really intended for prospective applicants that are thinking about applying for a teaching award, a program award, or a citation for this round, or perhaps for the rounds in the future. And the session's titled How to Craft a Strong Narrative for an AAUT application. So this is a really important session, and to help us with this session, we've got two invited presenters. The first presenter is Dr. Joy Whitton, and the second presenter is Angela Jones. Joy, if you can just wave your hand so people can see who you are, and then Angela, if you can wave as well. So both are on screen. So let me just say a couple of words about Joy. So Joy was a grants and awards consultant for 12 plus years at Monash University in the portfolio of the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Education, advising and supporting academics on how to evidence impact of their teaching and student learning. So we used to call Joy the awards whisperer. I used to work with Joy when I was back at RMIT. But she's also done a PhD in higher education on how educators can encourage the use of learners' imagination in non-arts discipline. So she brings a real love and commitment to learning and teaching. So she is of great experience, and you're very valuable for this session. And the second presenter is Dr. Angela Jones. She's a senior lecturer in Access and Equity and the course coordinator of the Uni Prep program at Edith Cowan University in WA. She was previously the head of discipline for the university's preparation pathways at Murdoch University, and she's a two-time award recipient, including a 2023 citation for outstanding contributions to student learning, for co-designing the Flexi Track in Schools Enabling Program. And also in 2024, she was a recipient of an award for programs that enhance learning. So we welcome her experience in applying for award and being successful in actually granting awards as well. This is the small team that we have that's been working with us on the awards. Soon we'll be bidding Danielle farewell. She has now moved on to another role at a different university, but we just want to thank Danielle for the enormous contribution, insights, dedication and commitment she's given to the National Awards program. She's been absolutely instrumental in driving these awards, along with Angeline, the awards manager. So Danny, thank you. This will probably be your last session with all the applicants, and I know that they have greatly appreciated these PD sessions that you've been organising with Angeline. Get lots of great feedback. So you can see lots of hands are clapping there. Before we move into today's session, I would like to give an acknowledgement of country. So on behalf of those present, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are all joining from today. And for me, that's the people of the Woorong and Boorong language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations. But you are all across Australia, so you will have your own traditional owners. And I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people of Australia. So if we keep moving to the next slide, I would now like to pass it on to Joy on how to craft a strong narrative. Over to you, Joy.
Okay, thanks. Okay, really nice to talk to you today, and I'm hoping that a number of you will have attended the evidence session last week. So this is a slide that I introduced the evidence session last week, because it's really important to understand evidence just not as an entity in itself, but to see it contextualised, see the evidence contextualised in relation to the claims that you're making about your contribution to the student's learning or to their overall student experience or well-being. So this is what this session is designed to focus on the narrative in which it is that evidence is embedded. And the reason why we have a cyclical image there is because it's really important that you present yourself in the narrative and in the evidence as well. Present that evidence over time so that you are showing and demonstrating through your examples and your narrative how it is that your teaching responds to the particular context in relation to your overall educational goals, and in an ongoing way, iteratively improves, is always listening for feedback, soliciting feedback and responding to that by adjustments, by major changes, by whatever. And that's the narrative, that is the feeling that you want to convey in an application. So we're going to actually really drill into that today. So the way to do that is that, first of all, to understand that none of the award assessors comes into your classroom and watches you or looks at your curriculum documents. So you've got a big task. That is, you really need to explain and help them understand what's the context in which you teach. And you will all be teaching in vastly different contexts. Some of you will have, you'll be professional staff possibly and run a program across year levels related to skills or to student wellbeing and support. There'll be quite different underpinnings and intentions behind your program. Some of you might be teaching, say, first year maths across a number of degrees. So that will have its own needs. Some of you might be teaching, say, third year radiography, where employability skills is something that's been built on since first year, and this is the last semester that you're responsible for if they go on. You need to help us to understand the nature of the challenges that are inherent in the context in which you teach, so that if it's one unit or if it's a number of different units or subjects that you're going to talk about, you will need to make that clear to the reader. Otherwise, it's very difficult for them to understand what it is that you do or why it's significant and important and really directly addresses the problems inherent in that context. So context is the thing you need to deal with first, so that you bring the reader with you. Okay, so that basically answers the question, which is why there are double arrows in that diagram, why it is that you do what you do in the particular ways that you do it. That context helps to answer that question. But another aspect to teaching, the teaching context, is also a discussion of your teaching philosophy and educational goals. And we'll unpack what that means a little bit more in the next slide. So that is a more personal or more particular at the level of your program. What are the educational goals, and how does your program understand how learning happens, and how does it use teaching strategies and assessment strategies that really dovetail with that idea of how learning best happens. The next thing you need to do is to give examples. So you need to say, okay, we've got that now, why you're doing what you're doing and why it would be appropriate. What does that actually look like in the classroom? So you need to describe how this looks using one or two examples so that the reader can actually see what it is that you're doing. Another aspect to this how, and I think perhaps this might differ a little bit from your institutional awards, in that these Australian awards are really a step up from an institutional award. So more is expected, a more scholarly approach to your teaching is expected, and therefore, if evaluation of whether you know how you know what you're doing is working, are students learning? Is it going as you intended? Are the effects as you intended? How do you set up those data what is the data that you're collecting? How do you set that up as part of the program in an ongoing way? So that could also be part of your teaching philosophy as well. So that is directly like, what are the results then of that data collection? So that evaluation will and interpretation will take place either as an individual or as a team if you're working in a team, and it will present certain things. Some things will work, some things won't work. If there were failures, what did you learn from that? And how then did you respond? So which is the next step? What did you do next? How did you respond? Over the course of an application, a reader who's evaluating this wants to have a sense of an educator who is constantly monitoring and evaluating how they're going and then iteratively responding as appropriate, so that you're not just presenting yourself as a teacher who did a great job in 1 year and really hit the highlights and then you could win an award. It's the hard yards, if in a way, if you like. It's the ongoing monitoring and improvement and intention, purposeful and deliberate intention towards getting closer to something that looks like great student learning. And if the situation in your profession changes, the demands change, that you then are constantly evolving as well. That's the sense that, if you can convey, expresses a successful application. So the name of the game is the impact of the students. Okay, so now this is about the hook. Most really successful applications have some kind of focus, some kind of cohesion. If you write about your teaching philosophy in the context, it might happen quite naturally that there's a kind of why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, whether it worked, and there's a natural logic to that, which can be a hook. Another thing, though, that another way in which some people do it successfully is that particularly if you've had a strong professional background and you bring a lot of professional experience, it can be something to do with those strengths that you bring with it and the changes that you make in curriculum that can form the focus of the application. So it could be your strengths. So you're answering questions like, what difference have you and your team made? What's the ultimate difference? I've heard a couple of people saying lately that they've seen applications where there's a couple of years of data just missing and the evaluators have wondered why. That's not a good idea. Not everyone does brilliantly, in spite of monitoring and evaluating what they're doing and introducing improvements. There are some things that won't go very well. There's some things that just don't work. The important thing is that you are listening to that feedback and responding. So instances of failure, of things that don't work, can actually be terrific examples to figure into your narrative. The important focus there being, how is it that you as a teacher or as a teaching team or a program team collect data so that you know if something doesn't work and how you respond to improve it once you learn that. That's the story or the focus there that you might pick up on and really explain. For those of you who are wondering, I don't know what my strength is or what my focus is, and are feeling that might be eluding you, one thing you could consider doing is to talk to your students or to talk to your colleagues and ask them how they see you. If they've seen you present, they've seen you in the classroom, ask them how they see you and what it is that your strengths. That might give you some information that might help you decide on a focus. Okay, now I wanted to go into a little bit of what is involved in writing about your teaching philosophy. The point being is that it tends to lend a great cohesion to an application, rather than an application that has a whole series of I did this and I did that, here's the evidence, it was terrific. Usually all those things that you did cohere around some kind of intention, some idea of how you think students learn and learn best in ways that might be important to your profession, and therefore they all hang together. So this is something that you might include in a short piece about a teaching philosophy, and really you only have a few sentences in which to do it. So how does your teaching philosophy, and it will respond to your teaching context, the situation in which you're teaching, and the problems and challenges that are inherent in that, which you've just discussed. It could be that there's a diverse set of students in there with backgrounds, of a degree background, like previous experience. It could be the nature of that diversity. Why is being an educator important to you? So think about, what are your aspirations for students? What do you want? What attributes do you want them to leave the degree with, or leave after you haven't taught them anymore? What would you most hope them that they take on into the future in their learning journey or journey as professionals? What are those aspects of professionalism or of continual learning that you most hope to inculcate in them? So you might want to make a statement of how you think students learn, your role as a teacher in that learning and those goals, and what are the responsibilities, as you see it, of the students in their own learning. And when you do this, it's very important to outline and reference the teaching and learning literature, how those understandings inform your understanding of how students learn. These national awards are different, and a scholarly approach that has shown how their literature informs the thinking about your teaching, what it's been. Another aspect, as I said earlier, is that your scholarly idea of how you evaluate the impact of your teaching will be influenced by what you have read in the literature and other ways that other people have had to get feedback on their teaching. So also talking in a scholarly sense about how that's informed your methods of evaluation is a good idea. So in summary, and I'm not going to go through this because some of this rehearses what we've just been speaking about, these awards can be a little bit more personal than an academic role, and they might have words like I designed or I tested, or if you're a team that's applying this, or a program award where you'll almost certainly be a team, we tested or we designed, rather than the third person. Some of this we've already gone into, so I'm going to move this. So in short, all the evidence that we discussed last week is going to be embedded in your discussion of your program's learning journey. Let's give an example. This one's a first year chemistry cohort, very large cohort. And this person has introduced their context and their approach within a reasonably concise frame. So on the left, you've got the story, and on the right, you've got what's good about it. So delivering a learning program to enormous first-year cohorts is a significant challenge. The diversity in level 1 chemistry stretches from students who've never studied chemistry before to students who've warmly embraced the topic throughout high school and excelled in it. Many students see it as a critical stepping stone in their education, while others lack a genuine passion, merely following prerequisite paths to an alternate goal. The challenge then is to design a curriculum which serves all students, providing support where required, yet enabling the top end to remain stimulated and achieve true excellence. So you can see the problem that's been outlined there and the nature of that cohort. My philosophy has been to tackle this diversity by implementing a broad range of learning opportunities across the program, which students can selectively choose from. We can't assume one size fits all. We need to accommodate for the range of student learning preferences and their associated priorities. Chemistry has traditionally been a nuts and bolts science taught to students as a rigorous collection of reactions, observations, equations and calculations. Accepting that not all first-year chemistry students will go on to do postgrad chemistry has been an important step in overcoming the cultural barrier which has propagated a content-heavy syllabus and arguably stops us from focusing on the main goals of breeding students who are strong, critical, and thinkers and problem solvers. So there they concisely describe where their main focus has been directed. So that gives you some idea of how that context and then the teaching philosophy and the problems can be melded together into a great narrative. So this is the part now where you get to give examples of your approaches. It's one thing to talk about it in a general way, but you really need to lead the reader into your classroom or into your curriculum if you've written it, and help us see what it actually looks like in practice. Now we know why you're doing it and generally how. Take us into the detail. So use examples to illustrate how you convey a concept or teach a skill or develop a curriculum. Now, it is not bragging. It's your chance, and it's your only chance, actually, because the assessors are not going to be in your classroom, to bring them into your classroom and to hear how and why you do it the way you do it. You need to provide enough description to make sense of your unique and significant contribution. And I think of it as cutting a wall sometimes in a classroom and letting the readers of your application walk in, have a look, see what it would like to be a student in your classroom, and then step out again. And then you go into another example and they do the same thing. So that's what you're trying to do. And that's part of what this detail is in crafting a narrative, as we're saying. So sufficient information. This is a really tricky thing, you know. You've got 4 pages of a citation. You've got 8 pages if it's a teaching excellence. So this is the skill, and this is where the drafting comes in. What is sufficient detail? You need to describe it in enough so that people can see it, but not too much that you just only tell about one example in the whole application. So, and that refers obviously to curriculum writing as well. But when we hear about what evidence you're doing, and you will all have really wonderful evidence that people are thinking what you're doing is quite outstanding, we need to understand what it is that you did that inspired that positive student learning experience and those accolades. We want to have pictures that remain in our minds. This one is particularly for program awards, but not only. Some of you might be teaching for some time or have introduced some kinds of changes over the course of perhaps several years. And to explain this to an outsider who's reading your application and knows nothing about it is a really hard task. So one of the things that you can do to simplify it and make it easier for them to follow what it is you've done is to have a diagram that accompanies a narrative that uses a staged, explains the stages in an introduction of certain changes over time. So this comes from someone's application and it worked very well. It's a condensation and you think, okay, I get it now. There are those staged forms of introduction, and then the reader is more able to then look at some of the detail in the narrative. Here's another example of someone who is talking about their innovation in the media studies area. Okay, a sensational cheating scandal shook the Australian tertiary education sector in 2014. A media outlet revealed that over 1,000 students had purchased personalised essays from a commercial cheating service. This practice, called contract cheating, threw into question the effectiveness of existing detection practices and created the need for a broader response. Urgently, I investigated the student dishonesty in assessment in scholarly literature and across institutional practices. Although research about online cheating grew, its translation into crucial institutional decision-making lagged. So I developed an evidence-based institutional framework for academic integrity work. I shared the framework and its practical implications to support other institutions across, and they go on to various international and annual conferences. And then they've got a diagram of the framework, really nicely done, quite concise, and really very obviously innovative in that it's a framework and it's a first. So really great example. This is another teaching example. It's in anatomy. So I run practical classes where students draw on themselves and their classmates with marker pens, detailing the surface projections of various organs and structures in the body. By incorporating visual, kinesthetic, verbal and literary cues, students who learn in each of these ways embrace another learning opportunity that creates a more lasting memory than a simple didactic lecture. Okay, I can just immediately see a whole lot of students in white coats drawing on each other, and they use body stockings apparently. here's a person who is making their revision classes really accessible. Student revision sessions are delivered using quiz-based games such as Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and The Weakest Link. Using a PowerPoint-generated game show platform and audio, I act as question master, getting the students to gain points by answering questions on topics they themselves have previously selected. In this way, the revision sessions focused on topics of interest to the students and is delivered in a more interactive way. It provides the students with immediate feedback and an opportunity to clarify muddy issues. So another really quite concise window into that person's teaching, in this case, a revision class. Okay, next. So in short, the readers or assessors of your application can't see into your classroom. And as we've discussed, some teaching, particularly people who've been teaching for quite some time, will have quite a complex story to tell. So they can't envisage it unless you help them. So try and tell a story. The examples you will find will absorb your reader. And by doing that, you're leading them along a mental pathway so they can really understand what you tried to do, why you tried to do it, what it looked like, what it would be like to be in your classroom, and what its impact is with evidence, what the benefits were to students and possibly to the sector, to the higher education sector, or possibly to the actual profession as well. In this way, if you do this, you do not have to assert that you're an excellent teacher, because the progress of this narrative will demonstrate your case for you. No matter which subcategory you're applying under, if you describe the why, the how, and how you knew it was working, that is what data you analysed, then you provide the evidence of your evaluation of its impacts over time and the benefits, that's the crunch, what the benefits are to students, including, remember, they could be quite diverse students, differentiated groups of students, and you provide peer assessment in various forms that we discussed last week as corroboration. You've actually made a pretty strong case. So these are the assessment criteria, and that you will, I think, all be familiar with. And I'm going to skip through these, but I'm going to focus, I'll just go through them really quickly. So the first one, A, is positively impacted on student learning, student engagement, or the overall student experience of various timeframes. So your narrative and your evidence will do that for you. Gain recognition from the colleagues in the institution or the broader community. Again, the forms of evidence that we discussed last week will demonstrate that you've gained recognition. So I refer you to that presentation. I'm going to jump to D now. If you've drawn on the scholarly literature, you need to include that in your narrative, providing evidence of the citation. And then the last one that I just want to focus on, because I think of all of them, it's probably the most hazy and the one people feel a little bit least comfortable about. And I happen to have done work in this space on how higher education teachers cultivate the imagination and creativity of their students. We're just going to focus a couple of slides on this. The first way that you can do it, I think these ways are quite relatively straightforward, is the approach that you're teaching. If your approach is being taught in other disciplines but not in your field, it is innovative. You just need to explain why it's relevant and appropriate in your cohort, what is the benefits of the students to bringing those methods into your field. If the approach was built on the basis of those models in the teaching and learning literature, how does it differ or depart? Like, what new elements that might be specific to your context did you include? Because creativity, your own creativity there, is based on you've combined the past elements, but you brought in new ones as well. Okay, if you've published about your work, that's definitely evidence of innovation. And using technology in teaching, because technology is usually such an enabler of collaboration, that is usually a part of the story that you would want to tell about innovation. And then a last one is, and I think almost everyone this applies to almost everyone in higher education, because the context in which our world is one of just really rapid change. Many of the professions that you are preparing your students to work in will look quite different in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it happens to be. Therefore, you're preparing your students in some ways to deal with a very complex and an indeterminate environment in which you cannot know in advance what it is that they're going to face. So I want to ask you a question here. When you think about your theory of learning, how do you account for our role, because we're all working in universities, and the goal of universities is to prepare leaders and learners' capacities to deal with things that are new and not foreseen, and that is the situation which many professions are going to be. So how do you prepare them to work in those environments beyond when you will have when your influence, your direct influence has ended? Okay, could we skip forward actually, not the next slide, but the one after that, please? Yeah, this one. So here is a list of attributes, personal attributes, or attributes to the characteristics of creative processes. And as I go through this, think about if in your teaching you are cultivating a learning environment in which you put students to face these things, to get practice in them, and to try and to work well with these environments. So learning to take risks, doing something that you've never done before, doing something new involves taking risk, and people have various levels of comfort in that. Some people, there's a big, in the medical field, it's not such an easy thing to take a risk. Risk taking is really important. It really is risky because there's health and death involved. But people still need to involve themselves in new processes. So how is it that you introduce students to being more comfortable with taking risks? What are the ways that you've included that in your teaching? Persistence. Persistence is often associated with high creativity. So persisting through difficulties, through impediments. How is it that you do help students to persist through experiences of failure and things not working towards increasing chances of success? Another one is this difference between given problems that are asked to be solved and the other, which is finding the problem or formulating a problem. Sometimes this means questioning the problem, sitting with a problem, and learning to reframe that problem, perhaps in ways that haven't been conventionally seen in the past, in order to solve them in new ways. If you think that your teaching accomplishes this, covers this kind of possibility where students are faced with these kind of situations, you might want to talk about it and claim that you're teaching for creativity, which involves student creativity as well. So creative thinking is often generates new ideas and possible solutions, but critical thinking assesses their validity or effectiveness in the context in which they're meant to be applied, so that it needs to be appropriate. So it's both together that lead to new and better solutions. How is it that your teaching program or curriculum offers opportunities for that to happen? So questions you might want to ask yourself are, how does your teaching stimulate and reward curiosity and exploration? And how do you incite motivation, especially internal motivation, in the design of your learning program? How does the learning environment that influences motivation operate in your class, so that people can have practice in those things that I previously covered in the previous points? Final thoughts here. Draft several times. I do encourage you to get people to read your drafts and not just academics. Ask them if they can follow it. Do they get a feel for what you've been doing to earn such accolades? Is there any part of it that they're confused by? And if so, have another look at that. I do encourage you to get a mentor to help to work to work with you as you write this application. If your own institution doesn't have such a system, the AAUT has a mentor scheme and you can apply to that. We discussed last week whether AI could be useful at all in writing an application, and I refer you to that presentation because I'm not going to repeat myself here. But one of the things that IA can be useful for is to see whether you could have signposted your application in a bit better than you have. Other readers can do the same thing. The visual appeal of the application, don't make it too crowded. A really, really dense application is really off-putting. So many assessors, evaluators of applications have said that. Give up all hope that you can talk about every aspect of your teaching. You need to have a focus. Identify aspects of excellence or of strengths and focus on those and leave things out. And just follow that focus. Use the active voice. And as I said last week, always make clear with each paragraph how what you're talking about connects to the subcategory that you're talking about. Why is it addressing it? Make that connection really clear. Just prefers to you some resources that you might want to have a look at. So there's a couple of terrific videos at the top that are available on the AAUT website. There are resource materials that they have, including applying for the mentor scheme that's just there. I do recommend having a critical friend or a number of readers. And then there's various writing tips, particularly if you're going for the Neville Bonner nomination. There are specific tips that are really terrific in that resource. There's also examples of effective evidence, and the AAUT assessment matrix is there as well. So hopefully that is helpful. Interested to know if you have any questions, and very open to helping you. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for the good tips, Joyce. As always, we will have the question Q&A sessions afterwards. Now, let's welcome Dr. Angela Jones to share her insights from a past recipients for citations and program award recipients. Over to you, Angela.
Thanks, Angeline. Yes, I'm here to give my reflections as an applicant. And I think this dovetails really nicely into what Joy has been saying today. So this is what I'm going to be covering today: how to slay your application, as the kids would say, and not die in the process, a bard's tale. So I'm going to run you through being the bard, the warrior versus the dragon, and your merry band of players. So it's so important, and this is what Joy has said. It's about choosing your one story to tell. So you cannot bring in every single thing that you would like to say. You've probably done many excellent things, and it's really important to narrow down that focus. So you've slayed your dragon in your uni award, and the uni think it's a pretty good tale, and they want you to tell more people, which is why you're applying for an AAUT award. So you and your team of warriors slayed the dragon, and now you have to switch to bard mode. So bards are the ones that tell the hero's tale, and a masterful bard can transfix an audience. So if you want to be the bard and you want to be a masterful bard, some choices have to be made. So it is really important to focus on the appropriate award type as well. These are quite strategic choices to be made. So these might seem simple steps, but my first mentor explained to me the strategy around it. So like any good adventure tale, my program award journey was fraught with hurdles that I had to climb, and the first was my category. The citation I won in 2023 started with a struggle between the lead applicant, that wasn't me, and the university, because she wanted to apply for a program award. And the program was amazing and long running, but the university wanted to put up a different program that had more supporting evidence and impact over time. So she relinquished control and trusted her mentor to go for a citation, which we ended up winning. I had less involvement in that particular writing up of that citation because I was no longer at that institution. But there was a lot of trust that I had in my award team and the mentor at that institution as well. And I'll talk a bit more about mentors later. The program award that I won in 2024, it took 2 attempts. And this is why I say don't die in the process, because it is a bit of a mission. And if you don't get the program award the first time around, I really encourage you to take on board feedback and try again. The award I won for was Collaborative Educational Partnerships in Learning and Teaching. And this was a strategic choice to be in that category instead of the student experience that supports diversity and inclusive practice, which, given that my program, an enabling program, is an equity-based program and I am situated in the area of access and equity, that kind of seemed like the category that would fit my program best. But my strategic mentor told me that less program awards happen in this collaborative partnership space, and that we had some really unique partnerships that were happening within our program and internal and external to our program. So she encouraged me to go for that award category instead. These strategic choices, even though they seem really simple steps at the beginning that you might be like, oh, yep, choose that category and move on and get started writing, it's really important to pause for a moment and think about whether that's the best category for you. And it's the same with choosing your compelling story to tell. So it might seem like a no-brainer because you have got this VC award, potentially from a university, and it's led you to this adventure, but the story needs to shine brighter than a VC's award. And this is what Joy's said today. You know, you're on a bigger stage. And I liken it to, you've won Battle of the Bands, but now you're going to Glastonbury. So you need to up your game with your performance, your costumes and your projection to slay the main stage. And the other thing is you want to have a really, really good mentor. If you don't have one at your institution, I believe the AAUT can help with that. But it was a really important part of my own journey to have a really good mentor. And I had several. I was very, very lucky, but they informed, well, I really think that they informed how I went about the process of writing and to be my guide at the side. The warrior versus the dragon. So it is so important to have this clarity of journey. And I am a creative writer, and I really have lent into this in terms of making sure that your narrative is showing, not just telling. And Joy hinted that as well. The way that you craft your narrative should be in such a way that you don't have to assert that you are this fabulous program or person, that your application just demonstrates that. So the clarity of journey is really important part. And these are actually quotes I've put in here from my own feedback from my AAUT award. And what was really interesting is that even after winning the award, there were still areas that I could have developed the application further, which was, I thought, some really great feedback to have in case I want to apply for an award in the future. So in that clarity of journey, I had this quote: the synopsis highlights the nomination claims regarding the success and quality of the program linked to internal and external collaboration and partnerships. So it was really important that every word, every section, every part of my application counted and linked back to that clarity of journey, that key part of, well, if you're an individual, it might be your teaching philosophy. If you're a program award, ours was an ecosystem of support with internal and external collaborations, and I had to link back to that at every single point in my application. I also needed to have a really balanced tale. So you've got, a limited amount of words, you have the different sections that you need to be writing to, and you want to make sure that within each of those sections, it's really balanced as well as part of that whole holistic narrative. So it's kind of within each section, there's like a mini narrative that's feeding back into the main story. As Joy noted, you want to have a variety of evidence and evidence types. And so in my application, it was some of the parts that were celebrated was the ample and varied evidence that had his systematic evaluation. And that was evaluation over time. And it was evidence that had the positive impacts on students, but also had a wider influence. So it wasn't just in my institution. It was that the program had contributed to scholarly literature in the field. It was informed by scholarly literature, but then it was also giving back to the wider space of enabling education on a national stage too. The supplementary materials, and I saw some people had asked some questions in the chat around using links and things like that. It's so important that your supplementary materials are well organised and clearly referenced for ease for your the people that are examining your applications or assessing your applications can really link each of those parts to your supplementary materials. They can see how they are creating those images or supporting that story within the application as well. And it's important that it is evidencing the claims made in the nomination. So you really have such a small amount of space and time that you want to make sure that every piece of supporting material that you include in that supplementary material is actually supporting and evidencing what you said in the nomination. Don't put in everything, just put in the bits that count, the bits that are going to tell your story. And having those strong references as well, the people that are writing those references for you, make sure that you are really strategic in who you choose to write that. And they are also evidencing what you have said in your application. Essentially, you want to have a through line through your whole narrative and in all parts of your written application, your supporting materials. You want to make sure you have that through line, that thesis statement, your core element that you're referring back to the whole time, and everything is speaking to that. So I spoke with my data person to get her thoughts around this. She couldn't come today, but having your merry band of players is such an important part of writing an AAUT application, particularly when you have something like a program award that you're going for, because they are a massive task to achieve, because programs have different elements. You're having to choose really specific parts of the program that you're wanting to showcase. You're having to evidence it over time, plus all the other things that you have to link to in an AAUT to make it shine. So having your merry band of players is such an important part. And as I've mentioned before, having your mentor a really key element to being able to actually get through the writing process and get to the other side. Having your application team, I actually wrote most of the application myself. I didn't have a really big team, even though it was a program award. I was the main writer, but I had an excellent awards team that was supporting me to help me with my my video that I had to make sure that the design of the application, as Joy said, that you want to make sure that there is space in there, that you're not overcrowding it, that the narrative is clear, and having a data person, that was a key for me, because qualitative data, that's my jam. But I really needed to have a quant person that would help me to display the data in the best way possible, and to be able to find data that I couldn't necessarily find in the dashboards and things like that at the university. So if you can access a data person, that would be my hot tip. Make them your best friend, buy them chocolates. And you want to avoid pitfalls with your how you present that data as well. So you don't want to focus on the real broad results, even though they might provide some context. You don't want to cherry pick your data. So you don't want to just put in, as Joyce said, like the best data. You want to, if there is nuance in that data, if some of the data isn't always the best, that's okay. We all have hurdles in our journey, and they can actually help us to show the whole story, so we can say, oh, this happened, wasn't so great in this year. This is what I did to have a creative innovation to improve the learning journey for that particular element. And then your data might speak to a different, have improved the next year. So it's really important that, you show that journey, because that journey is like it's a bit of a hero's journey. You don't want to rely on small results as well. And that was some of the feedback from the first submission of the program award, was that our results, we needed to show a bit more over time and in different spaces. So in the second award, we had different ways of displaying that data, different areas of impact, so breaking it down and providing more data over time. You don't want to overly manipulate how data is presented. So you don't want to be putting different categories of data all in one chart and making it really difficult to see. It is a journey. You want to make sure that you're looking after yourself when you're writing, if you're writing something like a program application, because it does take a lot of time and energy. So you want to make sure that you are taking breaks, taking time to be able to step back and not just get stuck in a can't see the forest for the trees scenario. I also had little tips and tricks for myself to put on different kinds of hats. So I would actually go through my application. Joy mentioned before, like the different assessment elements, and I'd actually color code my assessment for that to make sure that I was addressing all of those things. And finally, listen to your mentor. That's my biggest piece of advice. Listen to your mentor. I had Angela Hill and Denise Chalmers for my program application. They're amazing. And I praise them all the time for that. But that is it from me. And good luck.
All right. Thank you, Angela. Really good tips from both Joyce and Angela Jones. We're running out of time for questions. You can post it on the chat group, and maybe our presenters can stay 5 minutes after the sessions to answer some of the questions. So just a key date reminder, nomination period is from 25th of August to 10th of September. So by 10th of September, ICOs will upload all the applications online. And next slide. So please refer to our AAUT and UA website, or AAUTN, for a range of resources for nominees. And that includes a comprehensive set of recordings for each awards tab. Lastly, thank you. And that concludes our presentations. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of the AAUT teams, thank you for joining us today. Let's thank our presenters,